The protein bar sitting in your gym bag right now may not be as healthy as you think. Behind the promises of high protein, low sugar, and clean energy lies an industry built on ultra processed ingredients, artificial sweeteners, and clever marketing. We investigated the biggest protein bar brands in America, uncovering 7 you may want to avoid and 3 that actually prioritize ingredient quality and transparency. Number 7, Power Crunch bars. At first glance, Power Crunch looks different from almost every other protein bar on the shelf. Instead of the dense cookie dough texture most competitors use, it comes wrapped in a crispy wafer shell. The marketing feels lighter, cleaner, almost nostalgic. It doesn't look like a typical fitness product, and that's exactly why it deserves attention. The protein source here is largely protein blends combined with processed fats, that flavor systems, and sweeteners designed to create that candy bar-like experience. Nothing about this is illegal. Nothing about it violates FDA regulations. But the product reveals a larger trend inside the protein bar industry. The goal isn't necessarily to create the simplest food. The goal is to create the most enjoyable, shelf-stable experience possible. When you look beyond the front of the wrapper, you find the familiar formula repeated throughout the category: multiple sweetening agents, processed oils, emulsifiers, and flavor enhancers working together behind the scenes. These ingredients help maintain texture, improve shelf life, and keep costs predictable at scale. That doesn't make Power Crunch a terrible product. In fact, many people genuinely enjoy the taste. But here's the uncomfortable question. If someone handed you the individual ingredients separately, would you still think you were eating a health food? Or would it start looking a lot more like a dessert that happens to contain protein? That's the question we'll keep asking as this countdown gets worse. Number 6, MET-TRX Big 100 bars. Walk into any supplement store and you'll immediately notice the MET-RX Big 100 bars. They're enormous, heavy, dense, and intentionally designed to feel more like a meal than a snack. For decades, these bars have been marketed toward athletes, bodybuilders, and anyone trying to gain muscle. The promise is simple: more calories, more protein, more results. But hidden inside that promise is a question very few people ask. What exactly is creating all that size? Flip the wrapper over and the answer starts to emerge. Instead of a short list of recognizable ingredients, you find a long chain of protein blends, sweeteners, oils, flavor systems, stabilizers, and texture enhancers. This isn't unusual in sports nutrition. In fact, many performance-focused products are highly engineered because they're designed for convenience and shelf stability rather than ingredient simplicity. And to be fair, MET-RX does provide substantial protein. That's a genuine strength. The problem is what often comes alongside it. Nutrition experts consistently recommend looking for protein bars built around straightforward ingredients, moderate added sugar, healthy fats, and minimal additives. When ingredient lists begin to resemble supplement labels more than food, consumers should pay closer attention. This is where the illusion begins. Because MET-RX doesn't market itself as candy, it markets itself as fuel. And when something is presented as performance nutrition, most people stop questioning the ingredient list altogether. That's a level of trust the industry has learned to monetize extremely well. And the next brand on this list may be even better at it. Number 5, Pure Protein Bars. Few protein bars have a name as confident as this one. Pure protein. The message is built directly into the brand itself. No confusion, no ambiguity, just pure protein. And to be fair, these bars do deliver a substantial amount of protein for relatively few calories. Many varieties contain around 20 grams of protein while keeping sugar relatively low. That's why they've become a staple in gym bags, office drawers, and airport convenience stores across America. But this is where the investigation takes an interesting turn. Because when you actually examine the ingredient list, the word pure starts becoming much harder to define. Instead of a handful of recognizable ingredients, many versions contain a long combination of protein isolates, collagen, glycerin, palm kernel oil, tapioca syrup, flavor systems, emulsifiers, stabilizers, and sweeteners. Some varieties also include maltitol syrup, sucralose, and multiple processed protein sources blended together. Again, none of this is illegal, and none of it automatically makes the product unhealthy. The issue is something deeper. The front of the wrapper suggests simplicity. The back of the wrapper tells a story of food engineering. That's the central tension running through the entire protein bar industry. Consumers aren't necessarily paying for protein. They're paying for convenience, taste, shelf stability, and texture all at once. Dietitians frequently recommend choosing bars with shorter ingredient lists and recognizable food sources whenever possible. Pure protein succeeds as a protein delivery system. But as we move higher up this countdown, we're going to find brands that market themselves as something far more powerful than convenience. They market themselves as health. And that's where things start getting really interesting. Number 4, One Bars. This is where the countdown starts becoming uncomfortable because One Bars aren't marketed like old school bodybuilding products. They're marketed like an upgrade. The wrappers are sleek. The flavors sound like desserts from a premium bakery: cinnamon roll, chocolate brownie, peanut butter pie. And somehow, despite tasting remarkably close to candy, many varieties still advertise 20 grams of protein and just 1 gram of sugar. At first, that sounds almost too good to be true, and in a way, it is, because the secret isn't less sweetness, it's different sweetness. When you flip the bar over, you discover a formula built around protein isolates, maltitol, vegetable glycerin, palm kernel oil, soluble fibers, natural flavors, emulsifiers, and sucralose. Multiple versions follow a very similar blueprint. Now, to be clear, none of these ingredients are prohibited. The bar delivers exactly what it promises: high protein with very little sugar. That's a genuine achievement from a food engineering standpoint. But that's also the point. This isn't really food in the traditional sense. It's a carefully engineered system designed to create the experience of eating a candy bar while keeping the nutrition panel attractive. Dietitians often recommend paying attention not just to protein numbers, but also to ingredient simplicity and the overall degree of processing. Sugar alcohols and artificial sweeteners can also be worth noting for people with digestive sensitivities, and that's what makes One Bars fascinating. The product isn't selling protein, it's selling permission. Permission to eat dessert and still feel like you're making a fitness decision. And the next 3 brands take that strategy to an entirely different level. Number 3, Think, high protein bars. This is where the countdown shifts from obvious fitness products to something much more influential. Because Think bars aren't just sold to bodybuilders, they're sold to everyone. Busy professionals grab them between meetings, parents throw them into backpacks, travelers buy them at airports, believing they're making the responsible choice. The branding is carefully designed for exactly that moment: simple packaging, clean fonts, a name that literally suggests intelligence. Think. The message is subtle but powerful. This is the smart option, and in some ways, the bar deserves credit. Most varieties provide around 20 grams of protein, making them a convenient source of protein on the go. That's a legitimate benefit. But once again, the real story starts when you turn the package over. Many high-protein bars in this category rely on protein isolates, flavor systems, sweeteners, fibers, emulsifiers, and texture agents working together to create the final product. The result is something that tastes remarkably indulgent while maintaining impressive nutrition numbers. And that's the larger mystery of the modern protein bar industry. The healthier a product looks, the less likely many consumers are to question it, because it felt like the obvious choice. You weren't careless. You were responding to the exact signals the packaging was designed to send. The industry understands something most consumers don't. People rarely buy ingredients, they buy stories. And the final 2 brands on this list may be the most powerful storytellers in the entire protein bar aisle. Number 2, Quest protein bars. If there is one brand that defined the modern protein bar industry, it's Quest. For years, Quest wasn't just a protein bar. It was the protein bar. Fitness influencers promoted it, bodybuilders filled entire kitchen cabinets with it, social media turned it into a phenomenon. At one point, Quest became one of the most recognizable names in sports nutrition by convincing consumers that a protein bar could taste like dessert without the nutritional baggage of a candy bar. And to its credit, Quest does several things well. Many bars contain around 20 grams of protein, very little sugar, and significant fiber. On paper, the nutrition profile looks impressive, but then you reach the ingredient list: protein isolates, polydextrose, erythritol, glycerin, soluble corn fiber, natural flavors, palm kernel oil, sucralose, stevia, various gums, and emulsifiers. Again, none of these ingredients automatically make the product unsafe. The issue is something much bigger. Quest may be the clearest example of how the protein bar industry transformed food into engineering. The bar is designed to mimic indulgence while maintaining favorable nutrition numbers, and consumers noticed. Some online communities praise Quest for its protein content and low sugar, while others frequently mention digestive discomfort, artificial sweetness, or the highly processed ingredient profile. That's why Quest lands at number 2. Not because it's the worst, but because it helped create the blueprint. A blueprint that convinced millions of people that the closer a protein bar tastes to candy, the more advanced nutrition has become. And the number 1 brand may represent the biggest gap between health marketing and ingredient reality on this entire list. Number 1, Cliff Builders Protein Bars. This is the one that surprises the most people. Not because Cliff Builders is the most artificial bar on the shelf, not because it has the longest ingredient list, but because it wears the strongest health halo. Look at the packaging. Everything about it communicates trust. Athletes climbing mountains, endurance sports, outdoor adventure, strength, nature. The brand has spent years positioning itself as the protein bar for people who care about what goes into their bodies. And that's exactly why it lands at number 1. Because the gap between perception and reality is enormous. Many builders' bars deliver an impressive 20 grams of protein. That's real. The protein content is not the problem. The problem is that alongside that protein, consumers often get a product built around syrups, processed protein blends, sweeteners, flavor systems, oils, and a level of processing far removed from the whole food image many buyers associate with the brand. The result is a bar that can contain sugar levels closer to a snack treat than many consumers expect from a fitness product. And that's the pattern we've seen throughout this entire investigation. The industry rarely sells protein. Protein is the excuse. What it actually sells is reassurance, a wrapper that says healthy, a mountain on the package, an athlete in the advertisement, a promise that this choice is smarter than the alternatives. You weren't tricked because you ignored the label. You bought it because the label was designed to earn your trust. And that's what makes Cliff Builders the number 1 brand to avoid. Not because it's the worst product, but because it may be the most convincing story. If this investigation changed the way you look at protein bars, the good news is that not every company follows the same playbook. Some brands took a very different approach. Instead of engineering bars to imitate candy, they focused on keeping ingredients recognizable. Next, we'll count down the 3 protein bars that actually held up under scrutiny. Real protein bar number 3, Bear Bell's Protein Bar. After exposing some of the biggest offenders in the protein bar aisle, one conclusion becomes impossible to ignore. Most protein bars are trying to be 2 things at once, a nutrition product and a candy bar. Usually, they fail at both. Bear Bells takes a different approach. Instead of pretending to be a whole food bar made from dates, nuts, and minimal ingredients, Bear Bells is surprisingly honest about what it is. It's a high-protein snack designed to taste good, and that's exactly why it earns the number 3 spot. Bear Bell's Protein Bar. Unlike many bars on our avoid list, Bear Bells focuses heavily on protein delivery while keeping sugar extremely low. Many varieties provide around 20 grams of protein while containing little or no added sugar, which is one reason dietitians frequently recommend them as convenient protein snacks. Even independent taste tests repeatedly rank Bear Bells among the best tasting protein bars available, often outperforming brands that rely on much higher sugar levels. Now let's be clear. This is not a perfect bar. It is still a processed protein product. It still relies on modern food technology to achieve its texture and flavor. But here's the difference. Bear Bells doesn't build its reputation around a fake natural story. No mountains, no farm imagery, no claims that you're eating something straight from nature. Instead, it focuses on delivering protein in a form people actually enjoy eating. And in an industry filled with marketing illusions, that level of honesty is surprisingly refreshing. The next 2 bars move even closer to what many consumers imagine when they think of truly clean protein nutrition. Real Protein Bar number 2, Aloha Protein Bars. After looking at bars built around food engineering, sweetener systems, and marketing psychology, finding a genuinely different approach feels almost shocking because Aloha starts with a question most protein bar companies never ask. What if the ingredients actually looked like food? Pick up an Aloha bar and you'll notice something unusual. The ingredient list is still longer than a homemade snack, but the majority of the ingredients are recognizable: peanuts, pumpkin seed protein, brown rice protein, chocolate, almonds, cashews, monk fruit, sea salt. Even more interesting, Aloha specifically avoids some of the industry's most common shortcuts. The company states that its products contain no sugar alcohol sweeteners such as erythritol, maltitol, or sorbitol, and are also free from stevia. That matters because sugar alcohols are one of the most common reasons consumers report digestive discomfort with protein bars. Nutrition experts frequently recommend paying attention to these ingredients when evaluating protein products. Now, let's be honest. Aloha isn't perfect. Some flavors still contain natural flavors, fibers, and ingredients added for texture and shelf stability. It's still a packaged protein bar, not a freshly prepared meal. But compared with much of the protein bar aisle, the philosophy feels fundamentally different. The company emphasizes organic ingredients, plant-based proteins, and transparent sourcing practices. What's fascinating is that many consumers seem to notice the difference. Across nutrition communities, Aloha is frequently mentioned as one of the cleaner tasting and cleaner formulated options available. And that brings us to the final bar, the one that may completely change how you think a protein bar should be made. Real protein bar number one, the whole truth protein bars. After investigating the biggest names in the protein bar industry, one conclusion becomes impossible to ignore. The biggest difference between a good protein bar and a great protein bar isn't protein, it's transparency. Most brands force you to flip the wrapper over and decode a long list of ingredients. The whole truth does something unusual. It puts the ingredients at the center of the story. And when you look closely, you start to understand why. Many of its bars are built from a surprisingly short ingredient list: dates, cashews, almonds, cocoa, and whey protein. Some flavors contain just 5 ingredients, and the company openly publishes the percentage contribution of each ingredient. That may sound like a small detail. It isn't, because transparency is expensive. It's much easier to hide behind flavor systems, sweetener blends, proprietary formulas, and vague marketing language. The Whole Truth takes the opposite approach. The company explicitly markets its bars as containing no artificial sweeteners, preservatives, added flavors, or added colors, relying instead on ingredients people can easily recognize. Now, let's be fair, this isn't a magical health product. It's still a packaged protein bar. It still costs more than many mainstream alternatives. And no protein bar should replace a balanced diet. But compared with the highly engineered products dominating store shelves, it comes closer to what many nutrition experts recommend: recognizable ingredients, meaningful protein, and minimal reliance on additives. What's fascinating is that even fitness communities frequently point to the simplicity of the ingredient list as the brand's biggest strength. One highly upvoted discussion noted that the recipe was simple enough to be recreated at home using the percentages listed directly on the package. And that's why The Whole Truth earns the number one spot. Not because it's perfect, not because it's the highest protein bar, but because it resets your expectations. It reminds you what happens when a company stops asking, how much can we add, and starts asking, how little do we actually need?